The Senate Committee on Housing and Human Services is called to order. Will the clerk please read the roll?
Chairman Irwin.
Here.
Senator Santana.
Here.
Senator Kavanaugh.
Here.
Senator Bayer.
Here.
Senator Schink.
Here.
Senator Chang.
Here.
Senator Cherry.
Here.
Senator Geis. Senator Lindsay.
Here.
Senator Hoytinga.
Here.
Senator DeMoose. Mr. Chairman, you have 10 members present. There is a quorum.
Thank you. I'll now entertain a motion to adopt the March 3rd, 2026 committee meeting minutes. Motion made by Senator Santana. Without objection, the minutes are adopted. Okay. Today we're going to be voting on Senate Bill 272. Then we're going to move on and we're going to hear testimony about a number of bills dealing with child care here in Michigan, certainly a issue that's top of mind for many of us. Senate Bills 310 through 313, and then also Senate Bill 733. So we're going to start with Senate Bill 272. We heard testimony on this bill last week and adopted a sub that fixed a typographical error. So just trying to update members on where we stand with this. Are there any members that have any additional questions or who would like to make any comments before we vote on the bill? Okay, seeing none. We don't have any more. Do we have any more testimony cards? All right, having none, let's do it. Seeing no further testimony, I'll entertain a motion to report the S1 version of Senate Bill 272 to the floor with the recommendation that it pass. Motion made by Senator Lindsay. Will the clerk please call the question?
Chairman Irwin.
Yes.
Senator Santana.
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Senator Bayer. Senator Schink.
Yes.
Senator Chang. Senator Cherry.
Yes.
Senator Geis. Senator Lindsay.
Yes.
Senator Hoytinga.
Yes.
Senator DeMoose.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, there are 9 yeas, 0 nays, and 1 pass. The bill is reported.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to move on to Senate Bills 310 through 313. First, I'm going to ask Senator Bayer to summarize her bill, but as you can see, there are 4 bills here in the package. I'll talk about the other bills after I ask Senator Bayer to go first, but unfortunately, things have gotten very, very busy in the Senate, and so some of our other colleagues were not able to be here today. And if your committee scheduled this afternoon is like mine, you know why. But we do have Senator Bayer, who is here to introduce Senate Bill 311. Senator Bayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll take the time for the other folks who didn't come today. How's that? This is such an important topic, but I want to thank you and all the members of the committee for having this hearing and being here today. It is really a critical system. Our child care system is in crisis. The system is shrinking. Families can't afford or find accessible child care providers. Providers are losing employees, shrinking, or even closing down. And families are struggling to pay for services if they can find one, with costs often over $1,100 a month. The cost of this crisis is $2.9 billion annually in economic impact. Family members desperately try to stay in the workforce, but 14% of our parents have left their jobs in the last half a year or so due to child care challenges. People are actually leaving employment completely because they cannot find a way to have their children cared for. Our child care centers have been underfunded for decades, but even with costs rising over 35% since 2019, we still have a crisis of care because families can't afford it. Less than 5% of all Michigan children aged 0 to 5 were receiving a child care scholarship. This is in a state where nearly half of our children live in ALICE households. Families that cannot afford their basic needs. With insufficient and unaffordable child care, families have few options, and as mentioned, it does force them out of the workforce. It costs less to stay home. Just think about that. It costs less to stay home. They can't go to work. Michigan has increased efforts to improve access and affordability, but we are still woefully understaffed to meet the needs of our workforce. Child care workers are fleeing the field because of low wages. At $13, $14, $15 an hour, child care workers cannot afford to stay in this field. Michigan fast food establishments pay more. In Michigan, child care providers earn just 61% of the state's average wage. Think about that, 2/3 of the average wage in the state. In fact, the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment found that the poverty rate for Michigan early child care providers is 4 times higher than the poverty rate for elementary and high school teachers and middle school teachers. The same study found that wages have gone up in almost all other industries in Michigan in recent years, except for child care workers. Small paychecks make it difficult to attract and retain workers. Employment for child care workers actually declined by more than 5% in the last 10 years. We need to raise rates for child care, which causes, of course, a stronger need for increases in subsidies so families can afford to get their children to child care. Programs like the Tri-Share program in Michigan is a great start. We'll hear more about that in a minute. But we need to find other ways to fund this critical system to move childcare out of the crisis state that we have in Michigan. Programs like pre-K, very exciting and already helping families significantly by helping their children get ready for kindergarten and reduce their costs. But the final, most critical reason we must do a better job in our childcare system is about child care. It's about the care and the education of our children. The earlier a child starts to learn, the bigger the return on investment. The most important years for brain development are in children from birth to 3 years old. For every dollar we spend on K-12, 24 cents is spent on children in pre-K, and only 9 cents is spent on children 0 to 3. The age group that has the largest return on investment. The Urban Institute calculates 13 to 16% return on investment for 0 to 3-year-olds, 7 to 10% for K-12. We are in a child care crisis. It's time for us to focus on what matters: our kids, their education and care, the people who care for them, and make sure they are fairly compensated so they can stay in their jobs, and our families who want and need to work, the people who drive the economy in Michigan. That's what matters. This bill, SB 311, is part of the whole set of things that we need to do to make our child care better, our system better. SB 311 will require that state reimbursements made to child care provider must be adjusted for inflation annually. I urge you to support this small start and the other bills in this package today, and any opportunity we have to increase funding for this critically important work for our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bayer, for introducing your legislation and for also introducing, I think, some of the rationale that is underpinning all of these bills. And, you know, I would just say along those lines that we are in a we are in a child care crisis, and we need to do more with funding, but we also need to look for other opportunities to shape legislation that can help solve the problems that our families and our employers are facing as a result of this crisis. So thank you for that. So we have 3 other bills in the package. I'm going to run through them very, very quickly. We have Senate Bill 310 from Senator McMorrow, which essentially codifies the Tri-Share child care program. This is something that we already have through a pilot program that was started in March of 2021. There are already 303 employers currently enrolled here in Michigan, creating an estimated cumulative savings for families of $13,750,000. So this is a program that already exists and is already working for Michigan families, and Senator McMorrow's bill seeks to codify that. There's also Senate Bill 312 from Senator McCann. Senate Bill 312 would essentially require the department to establish an appeals process for child care centers, group child care homes, or family child care homes for rule violations, but it would exempt the very serious violations that deal with license denial or license removal. And the idea is that these centers need a consistent and dependable and published and transparent set of rules to operate under. And so this really codifies some work that I understand that the department has already been doing in this area. And then finally, Senator Anthony's bill essentially streamlines some of the licensing for child care centers that operate within a school, and it essentially allows the superintendent to verify that the school has already passed all of the fire safety inspections, right? Because as you can imagine, schools already have to go through all those inspections, but unfortunately, our licensing rules currently require the child care center to go through it again when they're operating in a school. That seems kind of duplicative and senseless. And so we're looking for ways to reduce unneeded bureaucracy, maintain high standards, but lower costs for some of the providers. That's the general approach here, and that's what these bills do. I'll also note that MyLeap is here if members want to have questions for them in particular. If you have any questions now for the sponsor and their proxy or for MyLeap, I'd invite those now. But otherwise, we have a number of individuals who are providers and others in the space who want to testify in this legislation as well. So I'm not seeing, I am seeing a hand. Senator Santana.
Thank you, Chair, and those who have brought this package before the committee. I just want to say I'm happy to see that we're making some strides, especially when it comes to child care providers here in the state of Michigan. We have seen such a significant decline in the amount of child care providers, and then those who are providing services have seen where they are being disproportionately asked to do or provide certain criteria when it comes to child care that may not necessarily meet the expectations of the community. And so I'm hopeful that with this package of bills and those who are being penalized oftentimes for just violations, that there's a larger conversation around just what that process looks like, because it is a burdensome circumstance when a child care provider has not had any violations, but yet one violation closes their entire child care business down when they're providing service for over 125 parents in the city of Detroit specifically. And so I'm hoping that this package goes far enough to provide a more robust appeal process, also provides more of a streamlined process between the licensure aspect of it and MyLeap when it comes to both departments and who's responsible for what accountability measures that need to happen on behalf of those business owners who own daycares. Because to me, it's not about just, the violation, but it's also about the displacement. People, not being able to go to work anymore because all of a sudden their child care provider is no longer available to provide their services to their families. So I'm grateful for my committee members for bringing up this package, but I hope the conversation goes further than just pen to paper when it comes to the bill package, but more importantly, the culture of both MyLeap and Lara when it comes to accountability and also providing those daycare providers with proper notifications as well as appeals. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Santana. And with that, I will welcome up our first bit of testimony from Madeline Elliott. Madeline Elliott is the Policy and Program Associate for Michigan's Children. If you could please approach, and there's a little button at the bottom there in the base, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Irwin, and everyone who introduced the bills in this package. As you said, I'm Madeline Elliott. I focus on early childhood policy at Michigan's Children, and we're a nonpartisan advocacy group that pushes for public policy in the best interest of kids and families. We are very excited about SB 311 proposed by Senator Bayer. It would tie child care scholarship rates to inflation, and this is really essential to protect the critical service that is child care, which is the difference between families getting to work or not. What we're seeing right now is there's child care deserts across the state. Families are on wait lists for years. People will say, you find out that you're pregnant and then you tell your spouse and then you tell your child care provider because it's that tough to get access to care. And meanwhile, it's tough for child care programs to accept the child care scholarship because rates are so low. Rates in Michigan for the child care scholarship haven't risen since October of 2024, so a year and a half, and inflation has increased by 2.7% in that time. And so 42% of child care providers in the state do not accept the child care scholarship. One of the big reasons is the low rates, and so we can really address that with SB 311. Without adequate childcare scholarship rates, programs cannot pay early childhood educators the wage that will keep them in the classroom and provide a stable classroom environment for young children. What we know is we need continuity of care. We need childcare teachers who are passionate about this work and can also afford to stay in this work at a time when they make $14 an hour. That's just not feasible. And so we need to ensure that there's high quality childcare through, teachers staying in the classroom and kids not having to cycle through different teachers. And increasing rates will ensure that, or, get us closer to that. The Michigan Chamber of Commerce, as Senator Bayer said, they released a report in 2023 that found that Michigan loses $2.9 billion a year due to the lack of adequate child care supply. And making the child care scholarship tied to inflation would put us in a better position than we are right now. The bill is a step in the right direction, but also, as Senator Bayer said, it's not all that's needed. We also need to increase scholarship rates beyond just inflation, but this is an essential first step. We also need to provide for prepayment so that child care providers are paid ahead of time like they are for private pay families, and to have infant and toddler contracts along with a tax credit for early childhood educators to better compensate them. For SB 312, Senator McCann introduced this bill. We strongly support it because currently the only option available to providers to request a review and appeal are to call MyLeap's call center or to talk with their licensing consultant. And sometimes, they should have the opportunity to talk to someone other than their licensing consultant, and they should have a more formalized process so that their issues are adequately addressed. We found that according to the CDC audit, 60% of calls to the CDC call center were not answered over a 2-year period. And so child care providers' concerns are not always getting addressed, so we really need a formalized process through passing SB 312. I also wanted to note that this bill, it includes centers and group homes and family homes, but it doesn't include license exempt providers. And those are the providers that receive basic health and safety training to provide care for up to 6 children in their home or in a child's home. And so I ask that license exempt providers be included in SB 312 since they are also paid by the Child Care Scholarship Program or the Child Development and Care Program. So in summary, we believe that SB 311 and 312 are important steps to addressing Michigan's child care shortage, and a strong, high-quality child care system ensures the parents can find good care for their children. It supports Michigan's economy and increases labor force participation. And, families build Michigan when Michigans prioritize families. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any, so that allows us to move right along to our next testifiers. I'm going to ask 2 people to come up together. We've got Jacqueline Taylor, who is the director and owner of Little Dreamers Early Learning Center, and Kimberly Tiemann, who is the director of Gretchen's House at High Scope. Thank you very much for coming to the committee to offer your perspectives and experience, and particularly for providers in the Ypsilanti area.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jacqueline Taylor, and I'm the owner and founder of Little Dreamers Early Learning Center in Lansing. I began my work in early education as a home provider, and over time expanded into a licensed center that now serves more than 60 families. I also serve as a board member on the Michigan Child Care Provider Collective and participate in the Capital Area Child Care Coalition, where providers and community leaders work together to strengthen child care access across the Lansing areas. Through my experience, both as a provider and an advocate, I have come to see very clearly that child care is often discussed as a family issue, but in reality, it's the infrastructure behind the infrastructure. Before hospitals are staffed, before businesses open their doors, before our economy begins moving each morning, someone must be caring for the children of the people doing that important work. At Little Dreamers, the care that we provide each day allows more than 60 families to go to work knowing that their child is in a safe and nurturing environment during the most important years of their development. I remember a parent sharing with me that once she found high-quality care for her child, she was finally able to return to work after maternity leave. She told me that before finding care, she seriously considered leaving the workforce because she could not find a safe and reliable place for her child. Moments like that remind me of how closely childcare access is tied to opportunities for families and to workforce participation across our communities. Providers are working hard to maintain high-quality environments for children, but we're navigating real challenges. I have staff members right now who hold bachelor's degrees and others who are pursuing master's degrees because they believe deeply in the importance of the early years. Yet compensation in our field often struggles to compete with industries that require far less training and responsibility. Retaining talented educators who care deeply about children remains one of the greatest challenges providers face. This is why Senate Bill 311 is so important. Reimbursement rates for child care scholarships do not yet reflect the true cost of providing high-quality care. Tying those rates to inflation helps providers navigate rising costs while continuing to invest in quality educators in high-quality environments for children. Programs like TriShare, addressed in Senate Bill 310, also recognize that childcare is a shared economic responsibility. By bringing together employers, families, and the state, programs like this help more families access care while supporting workforce participation across communities. Maintaining strong teams is one of our top priorities as a provider, which is also why Senate Bill 313 is also meaningful. Each time a center hires a new educator, we incur costs associated with onboarding, background checks, fingerprinting, and these are safeguards that are essential for protecting children, but those fees can add up quickly as a provider working to recruit and retain high-quality staff. Running a licensed program also means working within a regulatory system that ensures safety and accountability. Senate Bill 312, which establishes a clearer process for providers to request a review or appeal of licensing determinations, supports transparency and fairness within the system while maintaining the standards that protect children. And finally, as someone who started as a home provider and grew into a center serving dozens of families, I appreciate that expanding access to childcare will likely require a mixed model, which is why the Senate Bill 733, which introduces the concept of childcare microcenters, reflects the need for creative solutions that help expand access while maintaining safety and quality standards. Through my conversations with my fellow providers across Michigan, it's clear that the opportunities and challenges that we see in Lansing are shared by communities throughout the state. As providers work directly with children and families every day, we are eager to continue participating with policymakers to strengthen Michigan's child care system so that it works well for families, educators, and our community. Early education is not simply a service for families. It is the foundation that allows our workforce, our businesses, and our communities to function. When childcare is strong, families work, children thrive, and Michigan's future becomes stronger for everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my thoughts as a provider.
As a fellow provider, I think I could just say same. My name is Kimberly Tiemann. I'm the Center Director for Gretchen's House at Highscope in Ypsilanti. I am one of 12 centers that Gretchen's House has in the Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti area. We also have one center in the UP. And we have been providing high quality care for over 40, we're in our 45th year now, started in Gretchen's home and has grown since to become the 12 centers that we are today. I personally, my center provides high quality care for over 54 families within the Ypsilanti area, many of whom receive the Child Care Scholarship. And in order for them to continue to attend this high quality center, they either have to decide whether or not they'll pay the gap, or we will search and help. We also help provide them with additional scholarship funding in order for them to continue to attend high quality care. The current subsidy rate that we receive is not adequate to the true cost of care that families are having to pay in order for us to provide the high quality care with high quality staff, well-trained, and continue to provide the environment that they need to be in the space. It is extremely important that we all work together to continue the conversation in order to increase the subsidy rates on whichever level and direction we choose, but this is a great stepping point. This starting point of getting us to realize that the cost of diapers is going up, and I provide those diapers to all my babies. I can't keep doing that without that cost either impacting my center and our ability to run, or our families and their ability to be with us. The cost of food is going up, and we feed all of our preschoolers so that they come in the door and they know they're going to get breakfast, snack, lunch, and snack before they go home. We're guaranteeing them meals throughout the day, 5 days a week, and incurring the cost on our own in order to make up the difference that subsidy rate is not covering. So it is extremely important that we partner together in order to take these next steps. And so I support that bill along with TriShare. Senate Bill 310 is also incredibly impactful for us, not only to provide that care for families, but we also participate in it as an employer. And so in order for us to keep our staff who have children enrolled in our programs, and for them to be able to afford to pay the high-quality care cost and tuition rates that we have, we participate in TriShare on that level as an employer so that our staff receive that benefit of only having to pay a third of the cost of quality care. So I am here on behalf of Gretchen's House to support both of those bills.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I'm not seeing any hands, so I would just thank you again for being providers who can come and share a little bit of perspective on some of the things that you're providing in your centers and some of the pressures that you face and that your employees and your families face. So thank you again. Next, we have testimony from Annette Sobocinski, who is the Director of Child Care Network. If you would please approach and offer your testimony, I would appreciate it. We would all appreciate it.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Irwin and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony today. As you mentioned, my name is Annette Sobocinski. I'm the Executive Director at Child Care Network. We are a nonprofit who originated in Washtenaw County in 1971 and have since expanded our services to 14 counties in southeast and eastern Michigan. So, and we serve both families and child care providers as well. So I'm here today to offer my testimony in support of Senate Bills 310 and 311. At Child Care Network, I'll start with 310. At Child Care Network, we operate one of the TriShare facilitator hubs in the state of Michigan, so we work to recruit employers to participate in the program. In addition, we offer a different perspective as well because we are also an employer who offers TriShare as a program to our employees. So the opportunity to codify this program, I think, is an important one and one we're definitely in support of. TriShare alone, as was talked about by Senator Beyer, is not a solution, a total solution to the child care crisis in Michigan. We do definitely need additional public investment in the system to sustain it and make sure that it's thriving. But TriShare is a very critical tool that we can use to support families and employers and businesses with child care costs. So the fact that parents can have 2/3 of their child care cost covers is a critical piece of helping them to stay in the workforce and work to improve their own family's financial stability, and obviously benefits the employers as well. So one thing that I'll add to this as well is that there is federal legislation pending about the TriShare program, and so I believe that codifying the TriShare program within our state's law will potentially position Michigan to take advantage of future federal opportunities as well. So now I'll move on to Senate Bill 311. We are also in support of this bill, which would tie reimbursement rates to the inflation rate in Michigan. And as we know, this is really about maintaining the value of the payments that providers who accept CDC scholarship as a form of payment are receiving for the care that they're providing. We know costs are rising for not just child care businesses, but all businesses. So child care businesses are facing rising employee wage costs, rising occupancy, rising food costs, all of the things that is needed to sustain a business. And when rates for CDC reimbursement stay stagnant, as they have for several years, it effectively operates as a funding cut for providers. And so childcare providers, businesses are operating on razor-thin margins as it is. And so when it essentially operates as a funding cut, it makes it very challenging for them to run this program and offer this to families. We work with providers all the time who wish they could offer CDC monthly scholarships to their families. They wish they could accept it as a form of payment, but they're unable to do so because they just can't make it work financially. I would like to recommend that when implementing this policy, should this pass, that we make sure to work to ensure that the way that we implement it doesn't negatively impact Michigan's ability to fully draw down federal child care dollars as well. So just something to highlight. So that's the reasons why we support both of these bills. They help to support families with the cost of care. They help employers support their employees with the cost of care, and they help child care provider businesses stay open, which is critical. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide feedback, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. I don't see any hands from any committee members, so I will thank you again for your testimony, and I will welcome up our next individual, Tyler Hunty. Tyler Hunty is the CEO of the Early Learning Company, and I believe that Tyler is joining us via the power of the internet. Yes, there he is. Please offer your testimony, and thank you for being here virtually.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the HHS committee for bringing a focus to the issues, facing the childcare industry in Michigan. Again, my name's Tyler Hunty. I'm the president of the Michigan Childcare Provider Collective and CEO of Early Learning Company, where we operate 8 childcare programs in West Michigan, and we serve over 560 children each day with the support of nearly 200 team members. To echo what Senator Bayer shared at a recent childcare conference I attended, the key takeaway from that was that the price of childcare is outpaced what many families can afford, which has led to the lowest enrollment in decades. And when that happens, families start making really difficult choices. Some delay having children, some patch together informal care, and simply leave the workforce to stay home with their children. We're really starting to see that play out across the state. Childcare is a workforce behind Michigan's workforce, and when it becomes unaffordable or unavailable, it directly impacts our state's economy, as stated previously. That's why the policies being discussed today matter so much. On TriShare specifically, Michigan deserves credit for creating this innovative program, but the current structure requires employers to take a fixed 1/3 share of the child care costs. For many employers, especially small and medium businesses, that creates an open-ended financial liability because child care costs vary between child, provider, and location. And if we want employers to adopt this program at scale, we need to give them the flexibility to contribute what they can sustainably commit to, rather than requiring the same fixed share in every single case. Several states who have adopted this model have seen an increased participation from businesses with that flexibility and contribution. On subsidy rates, indexing them to inflation is a great step. In Michigan's one of the very few states, I think it's 3, where legislators still debate these rates every year. But inflation adjustments alone won't solve the problem. Right now, providers are starting from a base that's already too low to sustain the business model. At the same time, Michigan's minimum wage will increase from $10.33, where it was in 2024, to $15 on January 1st of 2027. And that's a 45% increase on what is child care program's largest expense. But provider reimbursement rates haven't kept pace with the reality, and if there's no increase to those rates, we're going to be put in a really tough position next year. In communities like the rural ones that we serve, where many families rely on subsidy programs, that gap is pushing us dangerously close to unsustainable operations. And when we talk about expanding childcare and meeting the need, I would simply say this: expansion will not happen until the economics make sense. No one's going to open new programs or expand capacity in an industry where margins are razor thin already and getting to the point of being negative. When it comes to the workforce and teachers, this is the most important piece. If we want quality childcare, we need to make sure that the people doing this work can build stable careers in it. Because at the end of the day, it is all about the teachers. And until the economics allow us to keep those teachers in the classroom, families, businesses, and Michigan's economy will continue to feel the impact.
Thank you very much for your testimony, for offering a voice from West Michigan, for focusing on what you focused on at the end there, which is, that it's all about the teachers and making sure that this is the sort of job that people want to do, because we need people who are committed and motivated and who care about kids. And it's really hard to get that when we pay folks such a pitifully low rate. A quick question for you. Maybe it's a bit off topic, but wages in the area of childcare are extremely low. Wages in the area of elder care are extremely low. Any sort of personal caregiving work is usually compensated very pitifully. Teachers usually get paid less than they would normally get paid with the sort of degree they have. What observation would you make about those types of careers and why they're behind in pay in our culture?
Well, yeah, I think it's a prioritization of the career. When you use the word career, and realistically, this becomes a job for a lot of people. And we're really trying to get people into this field as a career. And as people previously expressed, it's really tough to keep people in the industry. Turnover on average is 50% a year for a program. So we need to provide a livable wage to these teachers where, they can sustain and actually, pay for their family to live. I testified a couple years ago on a story where in my son's own classroom, his favorite teacher came to me and asked for a raise, and we weren't able to do it. And she's an incredible teacher. And she left for a $3 an hour increase to go work at a gas station. So that's what we're competing with in this industry.
Yeah, I appreciate that anecdote, because when someone is getting a massive pay increase to go from caring for children to go into working in a gas station, it does show you sort of the different levels of priority that society puts on different jobs. And there's just a certain set of jobs that we have never paid a living wage for, and it's really, really challenging to keep people in those careers when we don't pay a living wage. And I would just highlight the observation that I think should be obvious to absolutely everyone, that these are careers that have traditionally been dominated by women. Mm-hmm. That's why they're low paid. All right, any other questions for Mr. Hunty? Senator Baer.
Just not really a question, but a continuation of the discussion here. It is dominated by women, but also by women of color. And we just historically are just not supporting people in these roles and have the expectation that they will continue to work for subpar wages. Even though the gas station pays more, they will almost heroically continue to work in these jobs. I mean, we almost owe them back pay. Thank you for being here and testifying today.
Thank you, Senator Baer. Next, I want to welcome up Rich Van Tol, who is the Supervisor of School Home Community Partnerships for the Bay Aranac ISD. Thank you for joining us, and please offer your testimony.
Good afternoon, Senator Irwin, committee members, staff. Thank you once again for those policymakers that introduced this set of bills that under consideration today. I think they all will hopefully become part of a portfolio, if you will, of solutions. It's difficult as an early childhood advocate to repeatedly every year, it seems like, go to bat for early childhood because there are so many challenges, and it's been an uphill road. But this is progress, nonetheless. So I'm here to talk about Senate Bill 310. I'm with the Bay Aranac Intermediate School District representing Regional Facilitator Hub. We've been engaged with the My TriShare pilot since the very beginning. There were 3 that initially launched My TriShare across Michigan. And we were fortunately one of those. And we've seen this evolve and morph over time. We've been having a lot of conversations with employers as regional facilitator hubs. And one of the themes or threads that persist is, if you're an employer, put yourself for a moment in an employer's shoes and think about the promise or the potential anyway to start offering a new benefit to your employees to assist with talent attraction, talent retention, because we're trying to obviously curb the attrition rates across all industries, frankly. And this becomes a wonderful tool, but if there's not a commitment from the state to make sure and ensure that this lives and is sustainable and codified, there is going to continue to be hesitation, reluctance, and employers that aren't going to want to take the leap. So I'm hoping today that the committee will consider adopting, codifying this particular piece of programming for the state of Michigan. Once again, I think, the solutions, we're going to need many of them. It's going to take some private solutions, public solutions, and then public-private partnerships. TriShare has evolved in the state of Michigan to become one of those public-private partnership solutions, and hoping today that you'll consider adopting Senate Bill 310 for that purpose. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any, so I will thank you again for highlighting that codification helps cement that commitment that a lot of employers are looking for before they start making commitments to their employees. Next, I want to welcome up Alicia Guevara from the Early Childhood Investment Corporation. Thank you for joining us, and please offer your testimony for the committee.
Thank you, Chair Irwin and members of the committee. Greatly appreciate your leadership and the opportunity to testify on today's bill package. As Chair Irwin said, my name is Alicia Guevara. I happen to serve as a privilege as the CEO of the Early Childhood Investment Corporation. We're an independent body that was created by state government in 2005 to be a resource in early childhood systems building. We partner directly and closely with partners across the state, so whether it's families, our communities, early educators, and state and local government, really to ensure that at the end of the day, all families with young children are able to thrive. So kind of putting an exclamation point on something that Senator Bayer said, we know that the first 5 years of a child's life are a one-time window of opportunity. This is really where early experiences, whether they're positive or negative, are really forming that brain architecture and really setting that foundation for long-term outcomes around education, around health, all of those different things. And so really understanding that the work that we do in the earliest years, whether it's investments that are in dollar amounts or investments through policy solutions, are really the smartest type of investments that we can be making right now. And so that's why the focus today on this bill package, I think, is really critical to ensuring that not only are young children able to have access to high quality early learning and care programs, but families can go to work with confidence, knowing that their children are being cared for in safe and loving and nurturing environments. Employers are also benefiting from this because they can ensure that their workforce is going to show up every day and that they can fill those jobs that they have vacant. It also helps our local economies. It ensures that our economies can continue to thrive because at the end of the day, when childcare works, everyone is working and everyone benefits. Childcare providers, as you've already heard today, really are the backbone of the Michigan's early childhood system and really the backbone of our state's economy. They're small business owners, they're early educators, and they're essential workers to our state. Yeah, as you've already heard, for far too long, they have been significantly under-reimbursed for the work that they're providing. So if you look at the 2023 report called Michigan's True Cost of Care, so you've heard a couple of times in testimony already this reference back to the true cost of care. We did a pretty significant analysis here in the state to really understand what does it cost to provide high-quality care and what is that gap between what reimbursement rates are and for a provider to provide that care. For infants and toddlers in particular, you're talking about a $6,000 annual gap per child. So you multiply that by the number of children in care and then understand that this was in 2023 and inflation has continued to increase. So that gap is only continuing to widen and we're not making providers whole for the care that they're providing. Additionally, with Michigan's minimum wage set to increase, as you've already heard, that's going to put an additional strain on child care providers to be able to continue to operate, to be able to compensate early educators for the work that they're doing, to be able to continue to provide access for families to have care. And so Senate Bill 311, we think, is also, as you've already heard, a step in the right direction to be able to do that. But we also recognize that more has to be done to support our child care workforce that keeps Michiganders working and keeps our economy going. Because at the end of the day, Michigan families are paying the cost of this and Michigan's economy is suffering as a result. So We know that this doesn't need to be our continued reality, though, with packages like today, with an intentional focus on what are some strategic things that we can do through policy, what are strategic investments that can be made to really change and improve the child care system. We think that we can continue to make progress. We support, in addition to Senate Bill 311, also in concept, Senate Bills 310, 312, 313, and 733. The Tri-Share Child Care Program is one of many strategies and ways that we can improve child care here in the state. Again, there are many more things that are a work in progress, different initiatives, different pilots that we can look to, what the impact has been, what we can scale and really invest in because we know what can work. With Senate Bill 310 in particular, we also think this is an opportunity for alignment with another policy initiative that the Think Babies Michigan Coalition, which is a coalition of nearly 3,000 members across the state focused on prenatal to 3 initiatives, has been calling for many years for the creation of an early childhood fund, really to get at this idea of a dedicated revenue source that can pay for things like compensation, like we've seen in other states, to help really ensure that we are compensating early educators. Also, I'd be remiss not to mention in our support of Senate Bill 313, while this really helps ISDs in particular, there are many community-based organizations and nonprofit and small businesses who are doing childcare who have experienced quite a number of difficulties and challenges working with Fire Safety Bureau. And so thinking about that kind of next step to Senate Bill 313, what can we do to help support changes for CBOs? So again, I want to thank you for your attention to this issue today. It's incredibly important. Your leadership to addressing the child care crisis is much appreciated. We have an opportunity here to do some really good work, and there's lots of good people in this room here and outside of this room who are willing to work with you also. Thank you again, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you again, Ms. Guevara. I'm not seeing any questions, so thanks. Finally, on this group of bills, we have Terrell Couch, who is the Director of Public Affairs for Mothering Justice. Thank you for joining us, and if you could offer your testimony, it would be appreciated.
Thank you, Chair Irwin. My name is Terrell Couch. As was previously mentioned, I am the Director of Public Affairs for Mothering Justice, but I'm here on behalf of the Mothering Justice Action Fund. One of the great things about bill packages like this is you get a lot of really great testimony. One of the unfortunate things for me is I'm the last one to testify, and you will hear a lot of similar talking points.
Well, Terrell, you can feel free to truncate them because we do have more testimony after this.
Absolutely, Chair. The Mothering Justice Action Fund is a 501c4 that is a nationwide project rooted in Michigan that dedicates to returning decision-making power back to those who are most impacted. And that is why this bill package is so important and why we are here in support of the broader bill package today. It is so impressive and great when Michigan shines a light on the workforce behind the workforce. Our child care providers continuously show up to ensure that mamas can go to work and they know that their babies are being safely taken care of and nourished. During the COVID pandemic, we saw just how critical this industry is. And as you've heard in previous testimony, we've recognized that that industry has been left behind to some extent. As this bill package is presented before this committee and moves forward, the reason the Mothering Justice Action Fund is supporting it is moving us towards a direction where we will continue to invest in early childhood education and make the improvements that are necessary. Michigan has a strong track record of investing in early literacy, especially in pre-K. But right now, we're having an opportunity to talk about our infants and toddlers who have been left behind. When we talk about inflation, such as formula, diapers, all of the things that are specially intended for our youngest, those are the products that make childcare so unaffordable for our providers. And when we don't have reimbursement rates that are meeting those needs, we're seeing our providers really struggle with their bottom line. Additionally, Tri-Share is a great program that definitely aligns with one of the structures that moves this work forward, as you've heard in a lot of testimony. But I would echo ECIC and Think Babies' position that there is a broader opportunity with this bill package to potentially create something like an early childhood fund that broadens the ability for us to impact our CBOs, our ISDs, all of the pieces in the mixed delivery system that makes Michigan's child care ecosystem so powerful, function appropriately. While it's amazing that some families are able to access that 2/3 discount, if you will, on childcare, not every family in Michigan has that opportunity, as not every provider is active in this program. Additionally, while TRISHARE has been a great first step and is moving towards a national model, we notice that these type of benefits for employment can sometimes lead to mamas feeling like they don't have another choice or another place to go, because that's covering my childcare now. That is ensuring that I have that opportunity. So as these bills continue to be debated and thought about, we open the opportunity to connect with this committee and other lawmakers for potential improvements. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Couch, for your testimony. Thank you for always standing up at Mothering Justice for the workforce behind the workforce. I like that phrase. I'm not seeing any questions from any committee members, so I will thank you again for your testimony. Next, we have our final bill in front of the committee, and we have a few folks who want to testify on this one. But before we hear from those folks, those real people, we get to hear from Senator Damoose and from Representative Kofia. So we've got Representative Kofia who's joining us, and we also have Senator Damoose. And I want to thank them for being willing to testify together and for joining us in committee to talk about this important legislation. And so I want to start with Senator Damoose to summarize his bill for our committee.
That's great. We do a lot together because there's a lot of this stuff isn't partisan at all. It's just common sense. I'm going to try to keep my remarks pretty quick today because we're going to hear from a real institution related to childcare, Patricia Saudis Little, who's poured her life and soul into this. But Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on Senate Bill 733. This bill addresses a gap in our child care licensing framework and provides a practical way to expand small, community-based child care options while maintaining strong safety standards. Clearly, the current options are not enough, and I can't imagine why anybody would oppose this bill other than they may be concerned about additional competition. However, we've seen that the current options are simply not enough. There's room for a lot more. In 2022, the Leelanau Early Childhood Development Commission received a grant through the Early Childhood Investment Corporation to test an innovative child care model known as the Infant and Toddler Child Care Startup, or ITCS. The goal was simple: to expand access to child care by creating home-scaled programs serving a small number of children, but located in facilities outside of a private residence. These programs are called microcenters, and they've been highly successful. Under current law, however, Michigan's licensing system creates a barrier to this model. Family and group home child care providers must operate within a private residence because that language is codified in statute. As a result, microcenters cannot be licensed under the family or group home framework, even though they operate at that same small scale. To move the pilot forward, the Bureau of Child Care and Licensing allowed microcenters to operate under center rules with variances because that was the only available option. In Leelanau County, 3 microcenters were approved, located in a church, a village facility, and a public school. Each serves 12 or fewer children and operates as a standalone, owner-run program. In 2024, licensing rules were updated to create small capacity centers, which allow up to 20 children. While that change was helpful, those facilities are still treated as centers and do not reflect the smaller, home-scaled modeled communities that communities are requesting. As everyone knows, and as we've heard today, child care is a huge challenge for working families across the state, but especially in a small rural district like I represent. To solve this crisis, we're going to have to get a bit creative, and microcenters are one of those creative solutions. So I want to turn this over to Representative Kofia, who's been working diligently on this very program and has really carried the water for this for quite a long time.
Thank you, Senator Damoose. That's very generous of you. I really appreciate the partnership. And thank you, Chair Irwin, Vice Chairs and committee members for the opportunity to just speak in support of Senator Damoose's bill. So we're working together on this because it's not a partisan issue. This is a crisis that our communities are facing. I represent Leelanau, part of Grand Traverse, a little bit of Benzie, most of which overlaps with Senator Damoose's District 37. And what we are seeing in our district, as many of you are across the state, is a crisis. We have what they call a child care desert, which means for every 1 child care slot available, there are 3 children waiting for that slot. So, we have worked together and worked with a local partner who, as Senator DeMoose mentioned, has been really creative and innovative in figuring out solutions, including this microcenter concept. I want to briefly mention that the state has already been really helpful. Senator DeMoose talked about the funds that the state put forward to work with Patricia Sudis Little, who championed and architected the microcenters concept. That came in 2022, and then for me, coming in 2023, working with Patricia and seeing the success of this pilot, I worked with her, and many of you voted for an additional $800,000 in state funding to keep it going and to expand it beyond Leelanau County, the 3 in Leelanau County, to Grand Traverse, to Benzie, and we're working to make it statewide. So the state has already done a lot with those funds to keep it moving, but as the senator mentioned, we're running into the issue of you need so many variances and sort of work to try to make this work because we lack currently state statute that codifies this pilot model as essentially a third category of child care centers. So I don't want to belabor the point, as Senator DeMoose said, Patricia Sudis Little really has done the architecting. She knows this in and out. I've never met somebody who has worked harder to comb through state law and the rules for centers and the rules for child home-based and figure out how to make it work. Deeply grateful to Patricia Sudis Little. So I'll hand it off to her, just noting she's a former Leelanau County Commissioner. She's a former engineer, so that's been helpful in, again, the architecting of this complex realm. And then she is the chair of the Leelanau Early Childhood Development sorry, I can't read my own writing here. And again, the architect of the microcenters concept. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Patricia, who I think is
Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do that because first, Representative, I have to give committee members an opportunity to ask you and the good senator questions.
Sure.
So would any members of the committee have any questions, comments? Senator Lindsay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to help you. I have a sort of technical question about this. Concept seems great, opening these opportunities up. But was it really, is there no other way? One of the mechanics inside this bill is we're changing the definition of private home. So now private home will mean a couple of descriptive things that people would recognize as private home, but private home in this context will also be defined to include things that are demonstrably and very clearly not private homes. Is that the case? And we're doing that in order to create the opportunity for these microcenters. The microcenters can exist somewhere that won't be in a private home as anybody normally understands it. So I just wondered if you could speak to that. I'm sure there was a reasoning behind why this is the way mechanically we had to do this, but it just seems kind of difficult to say we're going to say private home means.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting point because I think you can see through to the intent of this, and sometimes we have to work with complicated, complexly written rules and laws here. The whole intent is there's a certain body of laws and regulations that apply to these very, very small centers that typically, for some reason, was locked in just to a home setting. And we're trying to expand that so that if you want to go to the building next door because your husband doesn't want you to run this in his living room, you can still do that without having to go through all the hoops that the bigger centers have to go through. So, there is a substitute coming because there was a drafting error in this, and maybe there's a way to clear that up because we're not trying to redefine what a home is here. So, but it's a fair question.
Senator Lindsay, and your question challenges the elegance of the drafting, not the intent of the legislation, I think. So we'll have some more conversations about that, and that will involve our friends from the Legislative Service Bureau who can help as well. Senator Santana.
Yes, I got a quick follow-up question to that because you kind of hit on it when you said that these house micro centers would not be held to the same type of standard. So I'm just kind of wondering, how does this impact traditional child care centers are held to a different standard? How would the standards vary for these micro centers?
So essentially, thank you, Senator Santana. So essentially, you're taking what that very traditional home-based childcare mixed age, as opposed to children who are divided up into classrooms by age, and a lot of the things that much larger centers do that then do require a lot of additional regulations. If you picture it almost like picking up what is happening in a home base, which is very common in the north, right? We're very rural, and in many parts of the state, you're lifting up that same operation that is occurring in a family room, a living room, a dining room, the backyard, and you're lifting that and putting it into the local church, right, that has a facility that is allowing that. Because many of our providers or would-be providers, they simply do not have the ability to build out their whole home to create that, but we have willing, schools and churches that are trying to innovate. And so it's applying the rules that would apply if it was happening in your living room to that same operation that is simply happening in another location.
Okay, so would that still apply to like urban centers as well? Because I know lots of childcare providers who they start off with 12 kids in the home, or in this case, we're talking micro centers, which are 7 to 10-year-old of age. But regardless, would that still, that same principle apply? Because you said rural areas. So I'm just wondering if that principle applies to urban centers as well.
It would apply to, regardless of where the microcenter is located in the state of Michigan. It's creating this third category for these small, mixed age and down to infant and toddler. It's applying those rules wherever they would be in the state, urban or rural. And it has a lot to do with the size of a very small number of children. And more of a mixed age, more of a home-based type setting.
And at some point, anywhere in the state, this would work anywhere in the state, but at some point, if they grow beyond that number of kids, they kick up into the higher category. There's additional regulations that wisely kick in.
They're not a micro center anymore once they hit that threshold.
No, I understand. So we go from Little House on the Prairie to the church or what have you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator
Feels like that.
Santana, and thank you very much, Senator DeMoose, for introducing this legislation. Thank you, Representative Kofia, for joining us. Next, we have on Zoom, who has already been introduced with much fanfare, Patricia Sotas Little, who is the Chair and Executive Director of the Leelanau Peninsula Economic Foundation. Are you with us?
Thank you, Senator Irwin.
Thank you.
And committee members for allowing me this opportunity. And huge thanks to Senator DeMoose for championing this bill, and also to Representative Kofia, who has, as you've just heard, has been involved from the very beginning, pushing this bill along and the whole project and concept. And I have to beg your indulgence. I'm battling pneumonia right now.
Oh, no.
But this opportunity was just far too important to meet with you today and to try and identify the need and answer any questions that you might have. I have to say Senator DeMoose and Representative Kofia have done an excellent job of covering, along with the questions that have been asked, of covering a lot of the issues that I would have covered, and they've done it beautifully. But let me add in a couple of additional things. We all have been talking about, and you've heard it from other people, that we live in a childcare desert. As Representative Kofia said, for every child there's, excuse me, for every child who needs care, they don't have it. Our numbers are tough. We don't have options. And what we really need are these options. And this bill, this amendment, provides just that, because it does provide an innovative option that is tested. There is a pilot. There are 3 pilots out there. One is in a church, and one is in a school, and one is in a facility that's owned by the village of Northport. And these 3 programs have been in operation for over a year. They're doing beautifully, and they have waiting lists. And you've been hearing about waiting lists from other people today. So we desperately need options. In fact, the governors recently created MyLeap at a recent conference, called for innovation in options. And this bill does exactly that. It provides one more way to bridge that childcare gap. And as you heard, we were fortunate to receive a grant from the Early Childhood Development Corporation, and that's it. I should clarify here. I chair 2 organizations and executive director for the one that Senator Irwin mentioned. Dry mouth, so sorry. The other is the Early Childhood Development Commission, and the commission actually received the grant from the Early Childhood Investment Corporation, but works hand in glove with the foundation, which is the economic business side of our county. So together they have worked on this project, and businesses have been very, very much involved. In fact, part of the success of this is that we have a partner with each of the micro centers that covers the costs of the operation of the facility, whereas the owner-operator covers the cost of the program itself and anything affiliated with that. We were challenged with starting 5 new homes in Leelanau County, and we thought, 5 and done, that's easy. Well, it wasn't easy, because very quickly we found that people don't want to do it in their homes for a whole variety of reasons, or the facility that they live in is not suitable without a lot of renovation to do that. So there are a number of people who would be willing to provide childcare in their home, but they can't do it. So that was where the idea came from, and our approach to the Child Care Licensing Bureau, to take it, the concept of, as Representative Kofia said, a program in your living room, and put it in a facility that is not your living room. But it's the same program. It's a home-based, small, familiar program that parents love, with 7 to 12 kids and 1 to 2 people that are providing care for those children. So they did give us the green light, as you heard, and we're really happy to be where we are today. We are also very grateful to have received the grant from you, the legislature, to continue this model into Benzie and Grand Traverse County. However, we're finding the same problem we ran into in Leelanau County. There are not a lot of people who want to start it up in their home. So we do have at least 3 people who have expressed interest in starting a micro center. So we can't offer that option to them without this amendment. And it does bring an opportunity that is so accepted by the community. In fact, it is amazing to see these 3 programs. The community just has embraced them and feels like it's their program. And it's in my church, it's my program. It's in my public facility, it's my program. And so they've been very supportive, raising funds for scholarship and doing all kinds of things that we never even anticipated would be a benefit of this. Of course, we would love to expand, but we do need to have this passage of this amendment so that we could offer out micro centers, because it was part of the funding that you folks gave us to expand the model, including micro centers into these 2 counties. So we have the money, we just need the authorization. And so we would appreciate your support, and I'm just willing to take any questions. I will mention one thing in response to the question, and I'm going to have to put on my glasses so I can read my own notes here, but Indiana is one of the states that has home-based programs, but they don't specify that they have to be in a home or in a facility. And also Minnesota right now is, through Morris College, New York Mills, is repurposing a mall to make into several home-based scaled programs, which is well, they'll probably end up calling them micro centers too. So there are precedences for this. It's just being done a little bit differently across the country. So with that, let me stop and thank you for this opportunity and see if I can take any questions.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony and for the work you are doing to make childcare access more available. I'm not seeing any questions, so I will thank you again. Next, we have another person joining us on Zoom. And I do want to mention that I know other people have other committees going. We're definitely done before 1:30, but we're close here. We got 2 more testifiers. Next, we have on Zoom Tambra Craven, who's the owner and lead teacher of Tam's Sunshine House.
Hello, and thank you so much. I'm, like you said, I appreciate all your time today. Proud owner and operator of Tam Sunshine House. We're located here in Kalamazoo. I've been operational for 32 years. We have definitely felt our fair share of ups and downs throughout the system. I also, the last 2 years, have been the co-chair for the ad hoc committee for the Family and Group Home Child Care Licensing Review legislation that is now pending. And I have I did submit some documentation, but I wanted to give a little bit of clarification to some of the stuff I submitted. As far as the SB 310 TRISHARE, My concern with the tri-share is that there be at least the disruptive possible to the program when adding these additional oversight portions. I know it was mentioned that there'd be hubs to maintain for the payments, and that has been something that has already been being done currently. And there's been some difficult areas in different areas. I know here in Kalamazoo, we had an issue with that, and now United Way Care does it. The other one is I am not a supporter of the micro centers in SB 733, and I wanted to clarify exactly kind of why. There's no provision in the SB 733, and I know it was mentioned earlier, that a sole proprietor would be able to not open just one of these in one location of the town, but in a second location as well, which this would increase the issues of possibly a safety issue as far as for staffing and children. And one thing that differs between a family and group homes, we're only licensed to operate in one location, and it's either a family or a group home in a private residence. And additionally, in Rule R-400-1903, a family and group home regulation states that licensees must provide direct care themselves not less than 51% of the time when their childcare is open. And I guess call me old school, but after 32 years, a center is a center. And out of respect that if we want to open the Pandora's box to allow micro centers, if that's the cliche term, then we should allow family and group homes, and just as a general terminology, open it up to either, they don't have to be in their home, period. Because right now it's stuck in SB 733, and it's underneath home child care for licensing regs. And it's a center, cut and dry. I mean, it may be being modeled after home child care, but it definitely appears to be, the definition of a center. And so I would hope that the rules and regulations would be, look at that as a factor, like I stated in my written proposal. And like I said, I did submit something in writing to all of you, and I just wanted to clarify those 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, and I thank you also for providing documentation so that we can refer to that as well. I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to move right along to more in-person testimony. I said that there was only one more, but I was wrong. There are actually 2 more. I'm going to ask them to come up together, though. Janie McNabb was the CEO of Networks Northwest, and Warren Call, who is the president and CEO of Traverse Connect. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your testimony on this important issue.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the committee and Chairman Irwin. My name is Warren Call. I am the president and CEO of Traverse Connect. So we're the chamber and economic development organization for the Grand Traverse area. And we also support the Northern Michigan Chamber Alliance. So that's 21 chambers and economic development organizations across Northern Michigan, which includes Janie's organization, as well as the territory you've heard a little bit about today, Leelanau County, Benzie County, and Grand Traverse County. From a business community standpoint, we're very excited to support Senate Bill 733. And I do think it's important to note, I respect the comment that was just made, but child care microcenters fill a definite need. They are a scalable, cost-effective solution to rural Michigan's child care crisis. These are small, owner-operated facilities that blend the intimacy of home care with the structure of a licensed center. They promote community partnerships, in small communities especially. They reduce staffing burdens and expand access where traditional models leave a gap. Microcenter pilot projects, as you've already heard, have proven very effective in Northern Michigan, and our business community is very excited about this new option being one of many solutions, as you've heard today, that we need to address childcare across Michigan. Importantly, the amendment, as was referenced earlier, takes nothing away from existing home-based care. It simply expands the options within the state's portfolio of solutions. These centers bridge the gap between home-based care and larger centers. They're scalable, flexible, and sustainable while still meeting important home licensing standards. They offer a cost-effective business model. Home-based care is proven as effective, safe, and popular with parents. And basically, modified home care works just as well in a school or a church as it does at home. Obviously, micro centers, as you've heard, are particularly well-suited for Michigan's rural regions and small towns, where traditional childcare models often have struggles due to low population density and limited infrastructure. But as Senator Santana alluded to, micro centers can also be effective in urban settings. They can target underserved neighborhoods with limited childcare options, and they can support innovative workforce development with employer partnerships. We believe that this is one possible innovation in a whole suite of solutions. And we think that this innovative childcare solution will enable more parents to access affordable childcare and the ability to participate in the workforce. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions or wait until after Janie's finished.
Thank you, Mr. Call. I am sorry for the quick interruption, but I do want to make a motion to excuse absent members before I lose any more members, because I know other folks have committees that are coming up, and so I just wanted to get that done. So if, without objection, absent members are excused, and thank you for that interruption. Please proceed, Ms. McNabb.
Thank you. Well, Janie McNabb, CEO of Networks Northwest. Networks Northwest is a 10-county organization covering the northwest corner of the Mitten. We are the Michigan Works Agency, the Regional Planning Agency, a regional economic development support organization, and many other programs under one roof. Because of that intersection of talent, business, and community, we definitely see the impact of the lack of affordable, available childcare across all of those sectors. One program that we convene is a regional childcare coalition. This brings together almost 50 members, stakeholders across the childcare ecosystem, but including economic development and business. We created a plan, a regional plan, 2 years ago that identified 14 different solutions for addressing the childcare crisis. One of the most tangible of those solutions was formalizing microcenters, looking at the example that Patricia had developed in Leelanau County, but also recognizing the promise of this model for the whole state. I think that microcenters really recognize childcare providers as the entrepreneurs and small businesses that they are. It gives them the opportunity to set up shop in a place that might be more conducive to providing that kind of early childhood learning. I'd like to also mention that as a Michigan Works Agency, we administer the PATH program, which is the program that works with individuals who are collecting cash assistance. In that program, one of the primary barriers to getting and keeping a job is affordable childcare. No surprise to any of you. But we also see several participants in that program who would love to create their own childcare, go into that business, but they don't have the opportunity in their own home. It doesn't meet the conditions for licensing. We have businesses, as Warren mentioned, who are ready to step up and offer space or sponsorship, where we can partner and make those connections. We can set those people up for success. The Michigan Works system has programs that can help pay for their training to make sure that they're successful. And the third thing I'd like to mention is at the community level with local zoning. As a regional planning agency, we work with several municipalities on master plans and zoning ordinances, and they find themselves stuck in this situation as well, where residential, maybe it's allowable, but it's not exactly desirable in many neighborhoods. And these small rural communities don't have the facilities or the spaces that meet the criteria for a full-fledged center. So across talent, business, and community, microcenters are a critical and really viable solution.
Thank you very much for your testimony and for connecting some of the dots that you're connecting in your community and helping us, highlight for us how this could be really beneficial to providers and families and employers. I'm not seeing any questions, so I'll just take the opportunity to thank you again for your testimony, and I will also ask the clerk to read in all the testimony cards.
Specifically for Senate Bill 310, not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Randy Gross from the Michigan Chamber. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Jackie Dulce from the Grand Rapids Chamber. And not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Kelly Saunders from the Small Business Association of Michigan. On Senate Bills 310 and 312, not wishing to speak, supporting the bills, Melissa Horst from MyLeap. Not wishing to speak and supporting Senate Bill 733, Sherwood Smith from the Northwest Regional Child Care Coalition. And then on all the bills in the package, Senate Bills 310 to 313 and Senate Bill 733, not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Jeff Cobb from Ed Trust Midwest. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bills, Emily Britton from YWCA Kalamazoo. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bills, Esther Bowman from Millwood Commons Learning Center. And not wishing to speak, supporting the bills, Dave Worthams from the Michigan Manufacturers Association.
Thank you very much. Before we do anything else, I want to recognize Senator Lindsay, who wants to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just didn't want to leave without making a comment on something that's been said today over and over again. And I appreciate the work that's been done and, whatever need to address the options for childcare. But a lot of the framing today has been through the lens of saying that it's either implied or explicitly said that it's sort of a negative thing if parents decide to stay at home with their kids and be the primary provider. And it's also been said over and over that it's extremely valuable and important for our economy and our workforce to make sure that as many people are in it as possible. And I'm a big supporter that whatever people choose, if that's the best option for them, that's great. But I would just like to observe that while it may be valuable to the economy to maximize the amount of labor that we extract from families by taking them away from their children, it might not be the best thing for civilization. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay, for hearkening to a time when one job was enough. Maybe that's something that folks from both parties could come together to have more productive conversations on. You know that it's welcomed here from this seat. So if folks have questions or concerns, either on the committee, out there in the audience, folks at home who want to make comments about the composition of these bills, please do, because I'm hoping that these bills will be back before the committee for a vote. And I know we've got some technical changes that we already need to make, but if there are other discussions that we need to have, please take those to the sponsors. Then thank you very much. There being no further business before the committee without objection, the Senate Committee on Housing and Human Services is adjourned.